Thank you all. In 2021, as I was crisscrossing the state and hearing from so many, the one thing that we were constantly hearing in almost every community was a concern about crime, and that crime was rising in Virginia. It's not lost on me that this week is National Youth Violence Prevention Week, where it encourages youth involvement. And so people from all ages are better able to tackle cases of youth violence before they occur. And this is also National Crime Victims Week. And I know the people that are standing behind me have worked with, alongside those victims, and know passionately that they are in the victim's corner, giving them a voice. Late last year, the Office of the Attorney General launched Operation Ceasefire along with Governor Glenn Youngkin, and it came up with this idea that in order to tackle violence, it's going to require everybody coming together. It's going to require partnerships both at the local level with our local law enforcement and also our friends and our allies with federal law enforcement. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am, not just for the men and women that we are partnering with, the local law enforcement, but the work done in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you'll hear from the U.S. Attorney for the Western District, Chris Cavanaugh, as well. We're so grateful about both what we've launched and the fact that we've had our partners, not just with the governor, but the General Assembly that have allocated over $5 million for ceasefire in this past year's budget. What does that mean? It means that our office is better able to tackle this issue that is affecting so many Virginians and make sure the victims indeed have a voice. We've hired 6 cross-designated special assistant attorney generals that are cross-designated in our U.S. Attorney's Office. And so in this region, our Office of Attorney General will partner with the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute specifically gun crime to lower gun violence. We also have 13 prosecutors in our office that are part of ceasefire. They're going to be bringing cases in state court as well. This is modeling on a lot of policies and procedures that have worked in the past that have lowered gun violence in other localities, and we look forward to seeing the results as they come in. But this is both about prevention and prosecution. I want to emphasize, we are simply not going to be able to arrest our way out of this. The one thing that we've seen an explosion of beforehand, we had a fantastic meeting roundtable with those stakeholders and law enforcement, and one of the constant concerns that was being brought up to me was the explosion and the increase in youth violence. And so our goal is to make sure, particularly for young people, that they're making the right decisions and the right choices. And so in addition to the additional prosecutors that have been hired, we've hired 3 ceasefire coordinators, not just to assist with their cases. We've hired crime analysts and criminologists. But we're also looking at finding ways to partner with leaders in our community to make sure they have the right resources. Just here at Lynchburg, we've conducted a grant to enable them and to enable those to be able to tackle, to do gang prevention activities just in Lynchburg. Over a $300,000 grant, so we could have individuals that can provide what law enforcement oftentimes can't. That's life skills, that's counseling, that's substance abuse. The idea is to break the cycle, to make sure that young people have both hope, but also that they're given the right information. So many times when you talk to those that are dealing with those youth that get caught up in gang activity, it's really just an overwhelming deep desire to belong and to connect. And the reality is, as we come to post-COVID, so many people have pointed out to me that some of the best avenues to make sure that young people aren't caught in the siren call of gang activity are after-school sports, after-school activities, and obviously our churches. And those were closed for over a year, and so now we're trying to play catch-up in some ways, making sure that we get the right information and invest in these young people's lives. But it's also about getting the right information to law enforcement. We are so pleased by the different grants that we have made. We over $750,000 to Roanoke for a real-time crime center, over $750,000 to Martinsville. I know we've also did grants to Lynchburg and Danville, and these real-time crime centers are about for law enforcement to know what's happening, when it's happening, and make sure they can conduct those resources in a very, very timely manner in a way that we can make sure that we can absolutely make sure that the victims aren't forgotten, that when a crime happens in their area, they're able to find the perpetrator, because the one thing we have seen, and the data that has been both shared with me from locals and local law enforcement and around on the eastern part of the state, is overwhelmingly violent crime is driven by a small percentage of repeat violent offenders. Depending on the study and the estimate, anywhere between 2 to 5% of violent offenders are committing in a locality of roughly 50% of the violent crime. So it makes sense, if you want to lower violent crime, you go after that 2 to 5% that are overwhelmingly driving and are the repeat offenders. So I think that's a key component of ceasefire. The next is to make sure law enforcement have the right data so they can make sure people are held accountable. And the third is the prevention, where we're dealing with both Virginia rules, which is in our schools, and life skills for our young people to make sure they don't fall into the siren call of illegal activity, and they absolutely have that sense of belonging that oftentimes they find through the wrong means, and make sure they're making the right life choices, not the wrong life choices. And so when we launched this late last year, we said we were going to be aggressive. We're so pleased that we are now fully ramped up with both our hirings and our prosecutors. We're starting to distribute the grant money. We're really excited about not just some of the cases. We already have over 70 active cases that we have launched with Operation Ceasefire, and the idea is to send a message that we're not going to tolerate high levels of gun violence and gun crime, that we're going to work with our partners both in local government and state government and federal government. And so what you're seeing is a real partnership. I was a prosecutor a number of years ago, and I could see sometimes you do see turf battles between state, local, and federal law enforcement, and I think you could see from behind us that is the opposite here. It has been collaborative. It has been open lines of communication, not just with the Western District U.S. Attorney and Chris Kavanaugh, but also our Eastern District U.S. Attorney and Just Aber, with the state police. I want to again commend the governor's office for being incredibly cooperative. And our local partners, Bethany Harrison here in Lynchburg, is one of many that has done fantastic work. And those standing behind me have done so much work, because at the end of the day, we know it's going to be a collaboration. We need to come together to solve our problems, and I'm really, really excited that we've been able to already in a short period of time shows of what happens when good people get in the room and work together on a common goal. We can truly achieve great things. And so without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Chris Kavanaugh, the U.S. Attorney for the Western District. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General Miyares. As Attorney General Miyares has stated, throughout the United States, we see that about 3 to 5% of the population is responsible for over 50% of the violent crime that occurs in our communities. And I, along with the tireless public servants in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Virginia, remain absolutely dedicated to fighting this uptick in violent crime and assisting our state and local law enforcement partners that are standing both beside me and behind me. Everyone up here agrees that there is a problem in our communities in Virginia, and we are all dedicated to solving it. And we do that by working together across jurisdictions, across agencies, regardless of whether federal, state, or local. And this absolutely starts with leadership from the top of each of our respective agencies, and a willingness to work with one another without care or concern for where the boundary line is or who gets the credit, only to make our communities safer. A perfect example of this is the Virginia Office of Attorney General funding a Special Assistant U.S. Attorney to work in my office to prosecute what would traditionally be state or local crimes, but to do that in federal court. Another perfect example of this is the relationships that Commonwealth attorneys and chiefs that are up here today have with the United States Attorney's Office to be able to pick up the phone and discuss where is the best case for an investigation or a prosecution to reside. This is exactly how it's supposed to work, and that's how it's working in many jurisdictions here in the Western District of Virginia. And I'm sincerely grateful for everyone who's up here today. In Danville, Lynchburg, and Roanoke, and soon to be in Charlottesville, we have our Project Safe Neighborhood program, where federal prosecutors and local prosecutors meet routinely with state and local law enforcement. We look at data. We receive the information and intelligence that often is in the hands of our critical law enforcement partners at the local level. and we identify a list of those worst offenders, of that 3 to 5% that you've heard about here today. And it's that group upon which we surge our resources and prioritize their investigation and their prosecution. Additionally, it takes a community engagement and strategic and intervention and prevention, but that doesn't work without the strategic enforcement against this targeted list of offenders. We have seen success in this approach. Because I'm here in Lynchburg, I'll tout those successes that we've had here in Lynchburg with the Operation Storytime, resulting in the capture and the prosecution of 35 individuals that trafficked over 150 kilograms of narcotics here into the Lynchburg and Central Virginia communities. But we've also had similar successes in Danville and Roanoke and soon to be Charlottesville as well. We seek to leverage federal resources and occasionally higher sentences where those sentences are deserved. What we're also seeking to do on the federal side is that we're trying to use the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act legislation that was passed last year by Congress that provides increased federal penalties for people who engage in straw purchases. That is, when they purchase a firearm for someone else who is a prohibited user, because we know that those firearms are the ones that are most likely to be in the hands of people that are going to commit violent crimes. And finally, in last year, I announced that our office going forward would prosecute any case where a firearm was discharged during or in relation to a federal offense. And what we've seen is, over the last year, in comparison to 2002, we are projecting a 57% increase in federal prosecutions for violent crime in the Western District of Virginia, and a 183% increase in federal prosecutions for gun crimes in the Western District of Virginia. And I want to make one last thing clear, is my directive to my team is not to go out and arrest as many people as possible. We are seeking for the most high-quality value targets, the ones that are having the greatest impact on our communities. And that notwithstanding, we have still surged these resources and seen this increase in numbers. Our work is far from done, and we anticipate a new initiative before the summer. But together, with these people up here, we can make a difference. We can turn the corner on violent crime, and we're starting to do so. Thank you so much.
We have heard from our federal partners. Now, I think it'd be so important for you to hear from one of our local partners, one of our local area Commonwealth's attorneys. We have 12 ceasefire cities, 4 of which are in this area: Roanoke, Danville, Martinsville, and Lynchburg. And I'd like for you to hear from our Lynchburg Commonwealth's attorney, Ms. Bethany Harris. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General Miyares. My name is Bethany Harrison. I'm the Commonwealth's attorney for the city of Lynchburg. And I'm so grateful to the Attorney General and his staff for recognizing this need in these target cities, and to be one of these cities receiving the benefits of Operation Ceasefire. The Attorney General has already outlined the advantages of this program, that you have a multifaceted approach to addressing violent crime, and the need for collaboration, how it benefits everyone, for all these agencies to work together. In my office, in the Lynchburg Commonwealth Attorney's Office, we have enjoyed a strong relationship with our U.S. Attorney for the Western District. We're very grateful for working with him and his office to determine which of our cases would be better suited for a federal prosecution as opposed to a state prosecution. We are grateful to our federal partners and certainly to our local law enforcement. They put their lives on the line every day for us to keep us safe. They see the horrors of violent crime, and they willingly go out there knowing that their own lives could be in danger to protect us. Now, the Attorney General touched upon something that I think it's easy for us to overlook about not just how important it is to have law enforcement, that you want them to have the resources that they need to address violent crime, but how also it is very important to have a sufficient number of prosecutors to prosecute these offenses, to take them through the court process, to make sure that we are achieving just results for the nature of these crimes. Without the sufficient number of prosecutors to handle all these cases, we can have all of the police officers out there making the arrests, but we want to prevent a revolving door of criminal activity by making sure we also have the bookend of the investigative process taken care of with these prosecutions, whether it be in state or in federal court. Now, when it comes to this multifaceted approach, I see we have Dr. Sterling Wilder here from the Jubilee Center. We have members of the Peacekeepers here. And I want to thank also Dr. Cardwell for the Good Gangs initiatives that we are working together to work toward prevention of keeping our young people out of a life of criminal activity, out of these criminal street gangs that sadly we do see some of our most violent offenders are young people, teenagers involved in criminal street gangs and committing some of our most violent offenses and using firearms. So it takes collaboration, it takes a multifaceted approach, and I cannot skip on this opportunity to remind everyone that we also need your help. Mm-hmm. We need the citizens of Lynchburg, the citizens of this Commonwealth, anyone who is witnessing crime, that we need you to call it in. We need you to come to court and testify about what you saw. We can't do it alone. Collaboration doesn't end with us. We need you as well. You are also our partners in this. So I really look forward to some great results. I look forward to the fruits of our labor and all these agencies working together. And I want to thank you again, Attorney General Miyares.